Thank you. Thank you so much for that one. All right. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. My switcher decided that it was just gonna not do the switching until this morning. So it's another flawless launch to the best produced live stream on the entire internet. None of this is the fault of our fabulous producer, Mr. Gregory Hecht. Unfortunately, he's off caring for a sick cat right now. So we're doing our best to manage without him. Other than that, if you would give me a quick thumbs up or down how the audio sounds this week. Hopefully we've solved the presence problem that was bedeviling us in previous weeks, and that hopefully we can move on and have just everything else from now will be terrific. I'm sure that's the way the show will go down. So anyway, want to say hi to everyone who made in. Richard Scott first in from Sunny PDX. Well done. Vio's joining us here from Minneapolis. Another beautiful spring day out there. I'm glad everyone's getting good weather out here. We deserve it, darn it. It's been a hard winter for a lot of us. Tyler T joining us from Selkirk, New York. Mike Beam in the house from Vancouver, Washington. Tim Legralo, aka Tim Kilbreth from out in Rockford, Illinois. And looks like everyone's doing good. And I just had Windows popping up because my machine just restarted along with my switcher. So who knows? Maybe things will start working soon. So we'll see. Agent of Camp, rainy and dismal 66 down here in Northeast Florida. They can't all be perfect. Day Libby from Roseville, California. And it looks like audio much better. Back to normal. Yes, thank goodness. Brian Price joins us from Green Bay, Wisconsin. Did the lips not match the audio for anyone else? All right, so if you guys are watching that one, they're probably off by about 2 frames. So try not to get too distracted about it right now. That is something that we did not have a chance to troubleshoot this week. So I'll try not to do the Godzilla thing too much. But yeah, it's we did not have a chance to do the clicker tap thing in. Well, yeah, let me see. Looking at the thing right now. Do you want to be foolish enough to try to delay it right live on the whole thing? Probably not. I think this is probably one of those things I should take well enough and just move on with my life. Oh, heck with it. Okay. Mic input settings, delay. Let's try about this many frames. Does that work for people? Is the sound matching better for y'all? All right, guys, give me a quick heads up down in the chat and everything. And unfortunately, because it means that I'm no longer hearing myself in real time, I'm going to have to give up my own monitoring. Tim and people say, okay, yes, it's better. All right, so I'm going to just trust that I'm making noise on the whole thing, because now if I monitor myself off of the soundboard, now I make myself crazy because I hear myself delayed by 200 milliseconds or so, and that is absolutely nuts. All right, well, anyway, welcome to the world of podcasting here. You'd think after about however many years of this, I might have gotten some of this down, but no, you would be wrong. Today is a Q&A with Pete show. I would be Pete, so we have one thing down at least working so far, and the other part of it is the Q&A. So a lot of people sent some things in. I'm going to try to address as many of those questions as I can. That was part of the preview, but I very much want you guys, if you have ComicBase TV, if you have questions for me, please put them in the chat at ComicBase TV, and I will flag them as much as I can. Agent of Camps, being a smartass here, just goes, Pete who? No freaking idea. I'm that comic base dude. So it's like, that could be like that Star Wars girl. I don't actually know her real name. She's just that Star Wars girl. I could be that comic-based dude. But we'll do that. But please put in the chat, and I'll hit as many of yours as I can. All right, so quick announcement. We have a new version of ComicBase out. Please be sure to clear your browser cache if you have trouble downloading it. We're on version 26.2.3925 is the build number. It has better handling of invalid data in the grid, so if for some reason you're inclined to type nonsense into the grid while you're going on, or clear out fields that should not be cleared out and things like that, it does handle that a bit better than before. We did a lot of improvements, honestly. The reason the build number switched by so much from last week is because we changed things on our side of things. We did a lot of improvements to the way we handle corrections. Uh, Among other those things, we're better handling the artist name cover by artist name. So hopefully you won't see those ones anymore. And when we push out this week's update, it's going to clear a bunch of those ones that have slipped in over the years. So probably a little bit more than usual as far as the activity of cleanup. The biggest problem, if you have a wanted list with custom check marks on it, that was actually an extension of a Crystal Reports bug fix that we did in the previous build. Turned out that wanted list also has custom checks. I'd forgotten that was even a thing, but that one's now working as well. And the other thing, question is the legacy numbering. We've now adopted an official standard on it. So this is the whole idea where, once upon a time, Marvel would go and have a series like the Avengers and let it run 700-800 issues. And it was great. And then sometime they decided, oh, wait, but if we publish a bunch of number ones, people buy a lot of the number ones. So we'll buy more of, issue number 1 of second series of Avengers than they would have of issue number 732 of the Avengers or whatever it would have normally been. And then they lathered and repeated this one so many times. Now you're on to the 15th series of The Punisher. Not even Punisher Warzone. The Punisher is now on his 15th incarnation, which now has like a legacy number. They want, because they want to have it both ways. You want the number ones to get people excited about the new thing, and so people, you could sell a bunch of number ones, but you also want to be able to sell the number 100 issue, the number 500 issue, the number 1000 issue. And so the way publishers have come up with of having their cake and eating it too on this one is to constantly restart the series with new number ones and things like that, but then in little tiny type to say LGY number and then some much, much larger number, which stands for legacy number, which is to say, if we hadn't just renumbered the whole thing, this is what number it would have been. And so when issue 4 of the new series is really legacy number 1000, we can get all excited and buy more of those again. Anyway, they're apparently not going to stop doing this, much as we might like it. So we have made a decision on this one. If you do put notes in that say things like LGY number 123 or LGY space number 123 or legacy space number 123, on yours as well, but they get standardized now. We've decided the official word from the ComicBase editors is LGY space number sign and then the legacy number. And they also do, they sort as I believe the very first item in notes, so they're easy to scan down. So for those of you who care about legacy numbers, that's a decision that happened on that one, and you'll see all that in this week's update. Let me see here. It said video froze up for a second. I said fine. I saw that on our upcoming stream as well. I think I think they called RTSP server or whatever. I think the StreamYard server had just had a little bit of an issue there, but hopefully we are all back to normal now. So let me see. Okay, Brian Stewart, let me go ahead and save your question about tags at series level. What's the best route for applying series? We actually do have some talk about that one, but I'll hit your question as well. Anyone else who has a question of what you would like us to address during the live stream, please put it into the chat at ComicBase TV, and I will take care of those as much as I can. Let me see here. And Brian Stewart has a comment that says, as I was catching up on the new GRU, all the legacy numbers, very handy for me to figure out where to start reading all those 4 or 5 issue miniseries. Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily an awful thing, but it's like I say, it's a have your cake and eat it too move on the part of the publishers. Like I say, I don't think they're stopping. Just like, at a certain point, you realize that they're not going to stop on variant covers, and so we had to expand our variants so we could handle hundreds and hundreds of them for a single issue if we had to. And that's a decision that looks better and better the more we look back on it. The ability to after the Z variant, we now just say V27, V28, V29, up through I think V300 is the current record holder. But hey, I'm saying this out loud, so no doubt I'm jinxing it. Anyway, so let's see here. Oh, Bryce says, "Can you repeat the legacy thing? Video was frozen." So, yeah, what we've done is editorially, we're seeing the legacy numbers get starred as a note. They get prioritized as the very first thing in notes if you have them, but we are seeing them just being repeated in like 3 different formats: LGY number sign X, 123, LGY space number sign 123, and some people, bless their hearts, would say legacy space number sign 123. And we just made an editorial decision that all of those things, if we see them, are all going to get treated as LGY space number sign, whatever the number is. And if you have multiples of that all kind of amount to the same thing, they all get condensed into one. So the one thing we wanted to not do is have notes, because notes tend to stack by default. We wanted to not start having people where you'd look at the latest issue of Wonder Woman, it would say, LGY space, number sign 912, LGY number 912, and legacy number 912, and Wonder Woman gets a white lasso or something. That was nonsense. So we wanted to make sure those got automatically cleaned up. And if you want to go to the file tools, rebuild lists item in ComicBase, and if you run that on your item information using the new build, it'll automatically standardize those for you. It does other cleanups, as part of that one, but that's new for this week. And just like I say, we've made the editorial decision on that one, and so you'll see those all change in your database this week, if that's something that you guys do. All right, so I think we are caught up on things, and we've talked about sound, and we talked about what's new. So let's get on to the questions. So first question up, and I didn't write down the person who asked these ones. I feel very bad about that. Basically said, how do I make a list of my comic books to sell? Surprisingly, I actually got this a couple times in the last couple weeks. Let's switch over, if we can, to our demo computer, and I think I want to say is the switcher working right or not? And I think the switcher was not working right, so I'm going to be doing all my switching manually. So let's hope this goes well. All right, so going over to, hey, there's the demo machine. All right, so there we go. And so let's talk about how you would make a list of things you want to sell. So it sounds very obvious. Probably that's why it's hard to figure out. Is that what you would do is you would, and let me go ahead and put the key on here. Somehow we've lost our keys. Swell. Okay, so I'm just going to talk without the ability to have a key, and yeah, no, the switchers just decide I'm not switching today. I'm only doing things manually. All right, so I'm the voice in your head is me, Pete Bickford. I just won't be on screen. All right, so the way you would do it is you would go up under here under report, and you would say price list. You say price list. Am I a shop? No, for the purposes of this, you are. And what a price list does, allows you to basically say, hey, this is what I've got, and you can say whether or not you want to include the cost. It's I'm not sure what the default is on this one. If it were me, I personally would not include the cost of, it's not their business as to what I paid for something. But this basically gives you a nice way of just saying, hey, look, this is what I've got for sale. You can do it in either summary format, where it just kind of says, look, here's everything I've got for sale from, just sheer numbers per title. You can give it to them in nauseating detail. You have to print this one landscape format if you do it, or the basic report. The main thing you want to do in general on this one, though, is you probably want to not actually print it. So in this case, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and print. You want, instead of actually printing this, because my collection, 57,000 issues, I do not want to burn like a million reams of paper in order to print that thing out. So what I would do instead is I would either go ahead and save it to web, export it, or really the trick here is you want to preview it. And let me just go ahead and do this for a particular series, because I don't want to print the whole thing, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it for the current Batman Superman. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say preview. Now, when I do that, come on, wake up, little computer. Oh, okay. And oh, okay, now we go. Sorry about that. We're running this on a mini computer, and so things can tend to get a little bit on the slow side sometimes. So let me go back here, and I'm going to just chat while that's fiddling away. So what you want to do here is if you hit preview, what it's going to do is it's going to pull up a little dialog which shows it on screen. At which point, if this thing will ever get off its duff and do it, you can go and click the icon in the upper left-hand corner, and it will allow you to export it. What I would do then is I would export the price list as a PDF and just attach that to whatever email I want to go to send my thing along as. I would not actually print the whole thing because that's nonsense. If you preview it, it's going to show it to you with all the pictures attached to the whole thing, and it winds up being like a really nice way of sharing your collection with someone who doesn't have ComicBase and just wants to see what you've got for sale. Wow, this computer is really, really slow. Oh no, don't tell me you're not doing a system update. Of course it is. Okay, give me a moment on that one. I'll be right back with y'all. This is the problem with firing up these things once a week when you just get them going and they want to do all the catch-ups all during uncannily timed for exactly when you're going to be on the air. All right, so I'll be moving that one back in. He'll be back in the mix in just a second. So anyway, the reason I would go with a price list is because it shows everything that's important about the issue. It shows what the value is of the whole thing. It shows what you're charging for the whole thing. And again, you can omit your own cost of the whole thing. And it shows the picture. So there's really, anything special about what the issue was in the first appearance of this guy, that guy, Deadpool, whatever else. It'll show that stuff by default in the notes and everything. And you can tell it pretty well. Now, if you want something that's even more compact, what you can do is, if you have the Pro or the Archive editions of ComicBase, is you can actually go ahead and instead of using the preview command, you can use a command called export. And sorry, I have to wake up my computer as it goes here. Let's go ahead and fire this up again. Have I convinced it not to do any more updating? Hopefully I have. All right, we'll see. All right, so what you can do on this one, let me switch back to that one. Are we switcher number 4, 5? There we are. Okay. So what you could do if you want to have something that's even better. Oh, good Lord, this thing is still spinning up. Is you can go ahead and say export. Now, what export lets you do is it lets you actually go and choose just the fields you want to show. So I could say, I want the title, the issue item number, the condition, the quantity in stock, and like my current price. And I could just say, and nothing else. And if I do that, and I would go ahead and include the field headers, and other than that, just leave it be. What it's going to do then is export just everything in there as a text file. And that's going to be incredibly small. And you can load that into anything. You can load that into a spreadsheet. You can load it into Word, etc. But more importantly, it's going to be so small you can easily put it through an email. So those are really the best ways, I think, to get you a list of your information out to a third-party person that you want to have browse your collection, and the easiest way to get that going. All right, so let me go back here to the other screen. Okay, there I am live, and let's see here. Let's see other comments that came in here. Can a new column be made for legacy numbers instead of using notes? Yeah, we thought about that. The reason we're not going to do it, two reasons. One is it would be blank of the almost 5 million comic books in ComicBase. It would be blank for all but like 10,000 of them, which is not a great use of time. It actually is pretty expensive to add new columns to things. We would also need to reformat literally every other report and everything else in the database and so forth. It did not seem like a particularly good use of resources. Whereas if we put it in notes and we make it so it sorts to the very front of notes, it winds up, you get the best of both on that one, where you get to see it right where it is. It's the very first thing that you will see next to the real issue number, when you print out any kind of detailed report, and it doesn't take up ridiculous amount of space. And then it also gets out of the problem of, hey, we don't need to worry about it conflicting with each other, and how do I do a find for legacy issue numbers and things like that. You can do them just as a note search should you really want to, but yeah, it's not a great new field. All right, let's see here. Would it be cool to put legacy numbers at the end of all the old Legion of Superheroes appearances in Action, Adventure, and Superboy? Is that a bridge too far? I would say if the publishers are implying that that was them, and you want to do it for the new issues, that makes sense, but don't duplicate the effort. So, I mean, if let's say Avengers ran 700 issues under its real number, right? Just leave it alone. It's not, it's legacy, Avengers number 700 isn't legacy number 700. It's just issue number 700. If they want to pretend after 4 or 5 new series that volume 2 number 3 was really legacy issue number 721, I would say wait till they bother doing that. I don't know what you're helping. I mean, if you want to, I guess you could. I guess it's not illogical to go ahead and put in legacy number 721 for Avengers Volume 2, number 3 or whatever else. I guess that's okay, but if you, don't restate the real issue number in the legacy number, because we're just being silly at that point. All right. Bridge too far. Age to Camp says bridge not even in sight. Yes, I would agree. All right, so all right, moving on from that. All right, next question was closely related to the how do I get a list of all my comic books, was how do I sell them for real? Now, I've covered this one on a number of other live streams, so I'm going to try to make this as succinct as I can manage. And I will tell you, look, all things with collectibles, the price you will negotiate is not the guide price. The price is, when you find a willing buyer, it's what they're willing to pay is the price that you will get for your books. And if they offer you a price that's too low and you decide that's too low, then you didn't sell them, did you? So, I mean, all things in the world, I don't believe in the labor theory of value. I don't believe in other things like that. Everything we buy is just what will a willing buyer and a willing seller agree to as the amount to take. That is the price of anything on this planet. I don't care if it's crude oil or issues of Action Comics numbers, legacy number 893. Anyway, so with that said, what I would do if it were my books. So let's just say I want to sell Pete's collection of 56,900 comic books, or so. All my answer to this one really relies on how much time have I got to do it. So if I've got to do it by next Wednesday, my answer is vastly different than what I've got to do if I've got a year or two to unload them, right? So if I've got a year or two to unload them, or a month or two or whatever else, if I have some time, then I would typically advise anyone who wants to get the most money for your books to go and triage the collection. Basically, I would take it 3 ways. If I have anything really, really good in my collection, like if I have that Action number 1, or that, or frankly, if you have a lot of things worth more than $500 or so, it either has to be a few things worth more than like 2,000-3,000, or a lot of things worth more than 500. And the easiest way to do that, very quickly, is just go into the internet menu and say request collection evaluation. What it'll do is, this is part of our partnership with Heritage Auctions, is it pre-screens your collection and says, is this the kind of collection that they might want to get interested in representing? And what it does is it does some brief calculations on the whole thing. It looks over your collection, says, do you either have a bunch of books that are worth more than 500, or do you have like a few books worth more than a few grand? And if you do, it gets a list of like your top 50 or 100 books, and with your consent sends them to the acquisitions guy, straight, the president of acquisitions for comics at Heritage Auctions. That's the entire thing it does for you. At that point, they, if they're very excited with you, they'll call you up, and I've seen them actually put people on planes and fly you out and make sure that everything that they think needs to be slabbed gets slabbed, and they'll hold your hand and walk you through the entire process. And for that, we get some tiny piddling cut, it's just as a referral fee. That's our entire involvement with it. The reason I would still say, even if we were getting a cut of that, is I'd say go with them, is because if I had the kind of collection that they would be interested in, and for the record, I don't. I once did, but it's been a number of years since I've been buying and selling and stuff like that. And just due to the mechanics of running ComicBase, everything I had that was very high value tends to have been sold off already, and I bought enormous amounts of stuff that is not particularly interesting to them, because we need to feed the database. But if I was the kind of person who had a bunch of things in my collection that were interesting to them, the reason you want to go with them is because you'll make more money selling with them than you'll make through pretty much any other place on earth. I mean, some of the other auction sites like Comic Link occasionally have some good hits too, but Heritage is a really good solution for people with really heavy collections to take the best stuff in them and just get stupid money for them because they can, they can basically feature your stuff and get it publicity in a way that really no one else can. So if I had stuff that was interesting to them, I would, it costs nothing to try. I would request the collection evaluation, and it's either going to tell you, hey, yeah, that might be interesting to them. Is it okay if we send them your details? Or it'll say like, yeah, sorry, no, it's not for you. In which case, it'll tell you no. But if it is of interest to them, do that. It'll take them a little while, but they will get right back to you, like in a matter of a couple of days usually. And like I say, I've seen them put people on planes and go and cull the best books, get them slabbed, red line to CGC or whoever else. And then, many, many months later, you find out that, wow, you got a hell of a check. That's amazing. Great. That's for the best of your best, right? For everything else, think about everything in your collection worth $500 or less. The next thing, if I had time to do this one, is I'd mark it all for sale. Now, by the way, before I say any of this, I'm going to pre-qualify that two things are true. If these things are not true, do not do this, right? Those two things are your collection is organized in such a way that you can get to any particular thing in a reasonable amount of time. So in other words, if someone orders Avengers number, 283 from you, that you have the ability to walk over to the Avengers box and pull issue number 283, stick it in a box and fulfill the order, right? The other thing is that you've accurately graded your comics. If either of those things is not true, skip this advice entirely, go directly to plan C, right? But if you've correctly graded your books, right? Like, so no one's going to come back at you and say, oh yeah, no, you mark this as near mint, but I'm looking at it and it's got huge rips all up and down the front cover, and this is crap, and I hate you and I want my money back. If you've done the hard work of actually organizing and grading your collection properly, so it's probably evaluated correctly in ComicBase, what I would do, and actually what I do, is I would just go ahead and in ComicBase, I'd go under the items field, I would go mass change, and I would say set all of it as for sale. For sale is checked. Let me see if my computer is cooperating again. So let me switch over to, there we are. So I believe it's the items field. Yes, there we are. Mass change. Mass change is a command that you use very, very rarely in ComicBase. What it is purely meant for is the thing when you want to do big stuff to a lot of stuff at once, not issue by issue, but do like the entire database. So what I would do is just go ahead and say for sale and to value is checked, and just go blammo, make changes, and take it back from there. Now, what that's going to do is it marks it as everything that you're marking as for sale is potentially that you want to get rid of, it's up for sale. Specifically, what it does is it makes it so it will post automatically if you say sell to Atomic Avenue. But you also can say find me all things marked as for sale and export those, or do things like that to load them to other systems if you like. But I would go ahead, go to your comic books, your magazines, whatever the things are, mark them all as for sale, hit go, and let it rip. Anything that you don't want to sell, go ahead and uncheck that. Another good thing to do is if there's things that you would sell them, but only if you had multiples, that's a good excuse. Like, let's say I have, let me go ahead and put both of these in stock right now. Mouse is being so sluggish. Okay, so let me go ahead and, hello, keyboard. Come on, keyboard. Is the keyboard not just, we're just not going to do keyboard stuff today? Okay, no. All right. We're back in business. All right. So what I'm doing here is I said I have one copy of this one. I have two copies of the other one. There's a little used thing in ComicBase. If I go ahead and double click on this issue so you can see it, it's called the reserve quantity. So let's go ahead and go to the other fields over here. And let's see if I can find, yeah, there we are, reserve quantity. So let's say I'm willing to sell it, but only my duplicates. Like I don't want to sell, if I only have one copy of something, it's not for sale. Let's say that's my rule. I'm willing to sell you my dupes, but nothing else. What you can do is you can actually set the reserve quantity to 1. Matter of fact, you could mass change that across your entire collection, in which case what that does is it says essentially all my dupes are available for sale, but I'm always going to hold one back. So if you do that, then if I went and I posted this for sale, it would only post the second copy of issue number 2 hardcover of Batman Superman World's Finest Silver Age Omnibus. So that's another thing that's, of interest when you do this. But when it's all done, I would go ahead and mark them all for sale. I would suggest go ahead and at that point just say post your for sale items to Atomic Avenue. It's gonna, do some, quick math here. It'll add up, what you've all got for sale. Ask you about things like your sales tax and whatnot. Boy, this machine is just really struggling today. I don't know why. But I'm just gonna switch back while it fiddles. I do not know. Maybe it's installing back stuff in the background. But let me kick you into gear. But anyway, what's going to do then is it'll quiz you on things like, do you need to charge sales tax? Do you want to have it automatically adjust the price as you go and so forth? But what it'll do then is it'll post everything that you've marked as for sale, which is not on reserve, to Atomic Avenue, at which point you instantly have a comic store of your own. And nothing that's really cool about that is that anyone who's been looking for those books for sale is going to get within a day a note on their on their wish list saying, hey, that copy of What If number 21 you've been waiting for? Some guy just posted one for sale in very fine condition for $18 or whatever the thing is. He's going to get an email for that thing, and you're going to make a bunch of sales right away. So that's actually pretty cool. So what happens when you open up your own online store like that is, especially if you do it through Atomic Avenue, the integration is very simple, very easy. And it looks like this. And you can say things like, offer free, whether or not you want to offer free product, standard shipping on orders over a certain amount, whether you want to, offer international shipping at all, et cetera. But when you post that, it all goes up there. It immediately is going to get you, all the people who've been waiting for that stuff to appear are suddenly going to say, oh, wow, this is interesting. This is for sale. And you're going to make a bunch of sales right away. Fulfill those orders, get yourself a good reputation on Atomic Avenue. It's a great system for buying things. It works just like Amazon used books, and then you've already priced it, right? You already know what you want for the whole thing. They're going to take I think it's a number like 15% as a commission for running all the credit cards and all the stuff like that and facilitating the sale. And then you get paid straight into your account. They're basically going to issue your checking account. They're going to issue you a check every Monday, 2 weeks after you've marked it as for sale. It's just going to land in your account. So if you ever sold a used book on Amazon.com, works exactly the same way, except they take less commission. But anyway, that's going to be the way to go because you're going to get full price, less like the commission on everything that you've got in your sale. I mean, there's no mystery about what the whole thing's going to go for. Eventually, it's going to slow down. So if you've got a normal collection, like I've got, the first 300 issues of Captain America, well, the first 100 are going to go pretty quickly. Issue number 283 is going to sit there for a while unless there was just a guy who was just waiting for it. And there'll be just a bunch of your stuff that after a while you probably want to move on from. And this also, by the way, if you didn't grade your stuff, if you didn't organize it, you don't have the ability really to fulfill orders on an online system. Don't play. Don't try. At that point, what you want to do is you either want to start parting it up and say, okay, look, I'll give you 500 issues of Batman, and start making deals like that. You can sell them in sets and things. Or you could just say, look, here's my price list, and start shopping it around. Start, say, look, I have a whole bunch of comics for sale. Here's what they, worth on it, according to the book. And here's what it is. Now, hopefully at this point, you've already sold all your really heavy stuff. Because if you're doing this and you still have a copy of Cerebus, the Art of Arc #1, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1 in there, or Daredevil #1, and you start just shopping it around to comic retailers and say, here's my stuff. What will you pay? Hey, you'll get raped. I mean, granted, you'll fulfill a lifelong dream of everyone who ever opened a comic shop, because the dream when you do that is that some little old lady will have said, I told my son he's got to get rid of his comic books and just pull the band up in here and just give me 10 cents on the dollar and we're good. Anyone who looks at that and sees, heavy hitter books in the mix, they will not be able to pull up in front of your house fast enough. But the problem is they're absolutely going to clip you. You're really going to pay for having, wanting to get rid of your books fast at that point. And if your heavy books are still in the collection at that point, you are probably going to be in the era of unacceptable losses, because when they sit there and say, "Yeah, I give you 10 cents a book," and you gave away $1,000 book in that mix, that's no good. If all you've got left is dollar books and they give you 10 cents a book, it's a different deal, right? So your job is to not fulfill the dreams of every comic store owner and whatever else. Have sold off all your heavy stuff that's easy to move ahead of time. Get the full list price or better from it by selling it off on auction sites, or Atomic Avenue, or Heritage Auction, thing like that. Do that work ahead of time. It's not a lot of work to get that done. When you need to get to bulk sale, then do it. And when you get to bulk sale, be prepared to take a really heavy haircut, because at that point, what you're doing, just like you were trading time for cash, they're trading time for cash. They're willing to say, "Look, I've got a store. I can afford the time to take these into my inventory, verify their conditions, get them organized, prep them up for sale, post them on my online system, post them in my store inventory, and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait." The average number of stock turns for a comic book in a comic store, when the last time I saw it evaluated, it was less than one. So in other words, most comic stores, that buy a comic book will pretty much die with that comic book unless they blow it out as their own bulk inventory at a later date. But they are saying, "Look, I've got a longer time frame than you do. I've got the ability to invite customers into my store and have them look through it and deal with all this stuff day after day. You probably don't. And you're going to pay for that privilege." And so when you get offered 10, 20 cents on the dollar, if you're in that neck of the woods, it's not a mark of offense to you. They're being legit. But I would say, if I had any kind of very, very valuable books, I would do steps number 1 and number 2 first. When you get to the point where it's just like it's time to just get rid of the collection and hire the guy to come up with the moving van and just take it away, make sure that you've got it down to this, to stuff that you can afford to take tiny fractions on the dollar for, because it will break your heart if you discover later on that, "Oh yeah, the copy of Incredible Hulk number 181 that was laying in there, I thought it was just another crummy looking issue of Hulk." You don't want to find out about that later on. So do your work ahead of time. All right. Questions that came in here. Brian Stewart asks, how do you easily embed extra pictures of your book, front spine, etc., to attach to Atomic Avenue sale item? At the moment, Atomic Avenue doesn't allow that. You have to trade them back and forth. I do know that that's something that that has been asked for, but I don't think there's any provision on the current site to allow that. There are some new things that I've been working on with them of late. You're going to get an Atomic Avenue update pretty quickly on the website. It's not about that exact issue, but I think it might be of interest to you when you see it. But that's for a later show. So, all right, I think that catches up with the live comments on that one. If anyone else in the live stream has other questions you want me to address, I will give you priority over the written in questions, just because you're here, so we wanted to do that. All right. Third question: is it true you're discontinuing disc-based versions? Whew. All right. This one, this was an exchange that actually got a little hot over email, but it's kind of driven us to go from a directional thing that we've been saying for years, that the math is not with us as far as we keep on relentlessly adding new things to ComicBase in terms of pictures, and Blu-rays and things like that keep on having exactly the same size, which means as we get more and better pictures, I mean, our media library at this point that we've gathered over 30 years of doing this ComicBase thing, we have basically a terabyte of ComicBase pictures. If you were to look at them in their uncompressed format, there isn't a great way to get that out to the world. The closest we got was 20 years ago or so. It is when writable Blu-rays became a thing. That was about the last time that we could almost do a file copy of everything we had onto a media and not compress the living daylights out of it to fit it. These days, we have gotten so very, very, very much content in ComicBase. The actual numbers right now, we're at 1.45 million comics alone. We have data on, basically another 5 million items on top of that. But picture wise, we have 1.2, we are just a hair below 1.2 million pictures in the database. When we first launched the archive edition, it had 55,000 pictures. These days, I swear to God, there are some weeks I feel like we get that many new pictures in. It is crazy how this whole thing has snowballed over the ages. And if you guys have seen the latest, a number of updates, you've seen that we've put out some crazy big ones of late. I very much try not to put out updates with more than 9,000 pictures in them these days, but we've had some nuts ones of late, and I do thank you everyone who sent data in on that one. But there's no getting around the idea that in order to fit this on any kind of physical media, we have to do horrible things to these pictures. We start up by having to cap their size. We already cap them in the downloads. If you're downloading on the archive edition, you're limited to a maximum height and width of, I believe, 1,050 or 1,100 pixels tall, which if you look at the actual comic book on a 96 DPI screen, it's basically just a touch bigger than the real item is. So you're basically 1-for-1 if you were to hold it up in front of your monitor. And if you have a 4K monitor, we limit them to full HD. I'm sorry, full UHD, which is 3840 or 3820 by 3820 is the maximum dimensions of the 4K. But where it really comes in, however, is in order to fit these onto the physical discs, we have to squeeze the living daylights out of them in terms of compression. And even that's not enough of late. We have to also downsize them quite a bit to fit onto the discs. And I couldn't tell you the exact numbers because we don't do it very often. And when we do, I'm always horrified by how much we had to chop them down to. The reason that I'm not really that worried about it is right around the time we had to, really turn up how much we were, brutalizing these pictures to get them onto the discs. People stopped having discs. In other words, it became one of those things where internet got fast enough that it wasn't a problem to serve them. So we adopted this whole thing 3-4 years ago now, where the very second you click on a picture, it has instantly downloaded a really not compressed version, full resolution, in the size the max for your edition of ComicBase. It'll give that to you, and I think it's like a 60% level of quality on the whole thing. I mean, it's really, really good. Like if you were to sit that next to the uncompressed version, our library, you would need a magnifying glass and need to look at very specific things to tell which one was the compressed version, which one wasn't. And we can give this to you in under a second. So what we decided to do 3-4 years ago is we came up with miniaturized versions of everything. So we make a 256 by 256 thumbnail of every single thing in the database. And so when you download ComicBase, you download, we call it the quick start pictures, and you get all of that. And so, when you're looking at the grids, you see everything, right all at once. But then the second that you actually click on something, it does this little magic trick where, just the act of me clicking on this thing caused it to go out and download the highest res version for your edition that we even have. And for this one, it turns out the highest version we have is a preliminary artwork blend, because we apparently, this is brand new. This one hasn't even shipped yet. This is the Batman's and Superman World's Finest. But yeah, let me go to a different title here to show that off. Click it on over here. Oh, come on. Batman, Superman, Fleetway quality. I don't know. Maybe I've got some of these. Maybe I don't. Okay. So So that issue number 1 or this issue number 2 did not exist on my disc 1 second before I clicked on it. Basically, in the time it took me to click, it's like 1001. It brought up the full res version from the internet, sized down very, very lightly, downloaded it and displayed it. It's like you literally can't tell it wasn't there all along. But what it does by that is it does something that we need very much, is that because when we install ComicBase, we're only installing the thumbnails. You get to see as a reference visually what everything looks like just by looking down the grid. Matter of fact, you can print these on reports. They look terrific and so forth. Anything that you could ever print on paper in reasonable size, it all looks fine just printing from the thumbnail. So you don't need to add that. And it takes a tiny amount of space on your disk. I think the entire install of ComicBase 4K with everything about it is something like 12 gigabytes on your disk space. Whereas if you were to install all the pictures from all the Blu-rays, you'd be like 90 gigs, and so forth and that. So yeah, the quick start thing is definitely the way to go. But then the other thing is, when we get to the point where we have as many pictures as we have today, installing them on any reasonable amount of physical media it's just a non-starter. You couldn't do it. We're not going to distribute a terabyte of content on disk, or frankly even as big download files from our servers. We're just not going to do it. But what you can do on the other hand is, if we make the deal that, yeah, everything is instantly visually referenceable, and the second you interact with any of it, because when you talk about numbers like, 6 million items in the database, 1.5 million comic books, things like that, the actual number of them that you will actually ever click on or ever view or do anything with for even a moment is such a tiny proportion. It's not going to happen. We don't need to actually serve that terabyte of content up to everybody. We're actually probably, if you look at most people, if they've been using the program for years on years, if they start out with the quick start pictures, they maybe are burning 15-20 gigs of disk space to serve it all at incredibly high resolution, because they didn't physically click on every single one and say, give me your giant high-res version of that one. Now, if you really, really, really want to do that, you can go to Action Comics, highlight all, and say download. You could do this. I suggest you don't. It's not a great use of your time, and honestly, it's not a great use of our servers either. But yeah. So with all this said, the math is inexorably against keeping going on discs, and because it's the issue's kind of been forced. We've been saying it for a while that this might have been the last version that we ship on discs. I'm going to just make the announcement here and now. ComicBase 2026, aka Metropolis, is officially the last disc-based version of ComicBase that we are going to be shipping. I think if you really, really need to, we could still get you a disc with the Pro or the Express on it, but honestly, there's no point anymore. Just download it. It works great. It's the fastest way to go. It'll save you a fortune in tariffs and duties and shipping and things like that. And it's time to take Old Yeller out behind the barn and put him down. But the disc-based versions of ComicBase, this is our last go. I'm just going to make the announcement here. So, and yes, as Brian says right there, yeah, end of an era. Yeah, no, it is. But yeah, I'm exchanging emails with a guy where you try to be as nice as you possibly can about, like, yeah, I'm sorry, just the math is not in our favor anymore. If you take a terabyte of data and you try to squish it fit into even 90 gigs of Blu-ray. I mean, dual layer Blu-rays, 2 disc sets of the whole thing. It doesn't work. It can't, you can't do it without taking away the thing that you bought it for in the first place, which is looking at beautiful, high quality, images of all this stuff. No, the way that we're doing it right now, honestly, it's the way to go. It's that I've got the instant access. I've got the breadth of the whole thing without just it. I can scan down a page with my eyes and see every single cover and see, oh yeah, that one. And the second I click on it at all, I see the nicest possible version of that one that I could ever want. That is so far superior to any other way we have of handling this problem that, yeah, no, it's time to it's time to say goodbye to the discs. And if you have some incredibly specialized thing that makes it so you need to have incredibly high resolution versions of the discs, well, I guess there'll be a collector's version of old versions of ComicBase, maybe for that purpose, even though the scans are constantly being upgraded with better ones on the new ones. I guess that's the thing, that maybe it's a market for somebody, but it won't be a market for us. So anyway, that's the announcement. So yeah, so it goes. All right, so that was that one. We got that out of the way, and when Mark gets back on Monday, I'll have to tell him. But yeah, no, it's every once in a while, I actually have this theory. It says, don't make a decision until you have to. And this is one that we saw the writing on the wall long ago. And the contingency plan's been in place for 4 years now of how to handle this one. And it's absolutely the way we prioritize things. We started edging toward the door 4 or 5 years ago. And the number of disc-based sales that we make in a year now is so infinitesimal compared to what we did back in the day. It's just, yeah, there's a time when, like, as much as we like them, as much as I love the ritual of the first packagings of the whole things and holding the thing in my hand, there's a certain time to just let her go. And who knows? Maybe someday there'll be a super deluxe version on, gold ROM or something like that that we sell for about $1 billion that, comes with a terabyte USB stick in it someday, but it costs, $800 to buy. Who knows? Maybe that's a product someday, but it's certainly not going to be a product for next year. Let's see. Oro says, my concern is that there'll be no incentive to create the wonderful packaging art every year. Well, the actual art, we kind of blew it out this year, where we said, okay, well, we've got what's our official box art that we do for the whole thing, and it is weird. It's a thing with software, is even when there is no box, you always make the box art. You guys have probably noticed that of things where they've only been available via digital delivery for like 20 years. They always make like a fake box cover. We'll probably still make the box cover because we're basically porting our art into the template. One thing I do really enjoy, though, is I love that we can go out, hire the art that we're going to use for the whole thing, and then we've had amazing submissions both from our team and fans and customers and things like that, where they've actually submitted alternate designs that we actually throw in as kind of like variant covers into the schedule, so that and those are actually things that nowadays we also download on demand. Is that when you launch ComicBase, if you're near a holiday, it will actually roll a random number, and if your number hits and it comes up that it wants to do something special, look for this around when we get to near Independence Day in particular. There's going to be special covers that just appear in the software, and then we download it once and we cache it locally on your local hard drive. So the next time if you roll the same number again, it's already there, but it's not even in the installer anymore. All this stuff comes from the internet. That's just, it's the era we're in right now. So if you talk about like, well, I want an offline version of ComicBase that always works offline, you can get a version of ComicBase that works offline in extremis. And as a matter of fact, there's a new offline mode that we inaugurated, I think, the beginning of 2025. So if your internet connection is just consistently down, like storms have run through your area and you have no internet, after it fails out a bunch of times, it'll actually just say, look, we're offline. You'll see a little warning in the upper right hand part of ComicBase says you're in offline mode. Click here to try to go back online. And all that does is it basically turns off all the things that try to contact our servers. I mean, you lose a lot of stuff. You lose the magic of downloading covers instantly. You'll lose the ability to get updates. You lose the ability to check graphs of values online every time you look at something. I mean, those are all things that we need the internet for. But if you are stuck on a desert island and and you're the last guy alive with a generator or something like that, you can still use ComicBase. We're a digital interconnected age at this point. So yes, what you can do with the program is degraded significantly at this point if you don't have the internet. So we've known that. Everyone's known that for years. I mean, ever since ComicBase 10, when we introduced the ability to download new content updates every week, it's the program with the internet and the program without the internet this one's like twice as good. So it's just one of those things that at a certain point you have to say, look, it's time to let the disk go. So that's where we're going. Thomas asks, how many variants of ComicBase 27? Remains to be seen. We've got a schedule. I want to say on the current schedule, there were 24 variants. If you include all the standard variants, the ultra rares, and we have them actually set up in the code as this one's a common, a rare, an ultra rare, and whatever else. But I want to say there's 24. That I saw, but it changes. We weren't, for instance, in the next version of ComicBase, you're going to see that there's going to be a cover for Dr. Seuss Day. I did not know that there was a Dr. Seuss Day until Brian Stewart, who might be, who is listening right now, just went out and created this amazing cover and then allowed us to have it for, Dr. Seuss Day. I was like, well, we have to do this now. And so then I had to write code which detects when Dr. Seuss Day is next year. And when that happens, you've got like a 50-50 chance of when you launch the program of getting the special Dr. Seuss Day cover just for that day or two. So yeah, no, we've got a schedule now. It's a thing. All right, so I think I think we've caught up. How are we doing on time? We're getting toward the end, but let's see if is there any quick questions I can ask. Oh, okay, item description format. Let's talk about this one. All right, so let me go back to my demo. And let's pull up something kind of current. I've been ragging on the Avengers all day. Let's pull up the Avengers. My goodness, this computer is just, what are you doing that is taking you this long? We are seriously on the 9th series of Avengers. I don't know why. I know this, but I keep blocking it out of my head. All right, so let's switch the screen here so we can do it. All right, so here's Avengers 9th series. And if we look over here to the item description field, let me go ahead and pull up the magnifier. All right, let's talk a little bit about item descriptions, item titles, and overall titles. This is something we added into ComicBase in the last few years. Item description is there to tell you why this number is this number. So in other words, what makes this item number 1, what makes this one 1-2, what makes this one 1/A, what makes this one 1/A-2, and so forth. Right, it's the item description is to basically explain the item number. It's not there to describe the contents. It's there to just explain why is this the 1A issue, right? So in this case, the 1A issue is the cover A by Kale Nagu. Somebody who knows how to say this, if you want to put the phonetics of this in the chat, I would very much appreciate it. And this is why this is the second printing version of that one. Here's the B cover, the C cover, the D cover, the E cover, etc. Right. So what we're doing on these ones, we have a format which we've eventually arrived as to how we like to see these written out. Because if we're just making explanations, you could obviously write these in any possible way going forward, but we're trying to make it not horrible. And so even though this is a field that we control, so as you can submit submissions to the whole thing, but we need to make sure that if we said this is the A cover, we are consistent about which one was the A cover. No one else gets to change that. And so we kind of own the item description when it's all said and done. In other words, if you allow us to make any changes at all when you download an update, item description is one of the things that if we change it, it will change for you. So we wanted to standardize how we talk about it. And the format that we prefer when we talk about item descriptions, it's basically 3 parts. All right, so let's take a here's a perfectly this is a good one. Let's go with this one. This is the 1 in 25 retail incentive cover B by Marco Cicchetto, right? Which, if you're curious about it, looks like this. All right, let's talk about what the 3 parts of this item description are. So if it exists, the ratio goes first. So if this is a 1 in 10 cover, a 1 in 4 cover, a 1 in 100 cover, a 1 in 1,000 cover, that part, it's usually the most important information. It goes first in the description. After that comes the adjective. It's the thing which describes the cover. So you could say it's the retail incentive cover. That's kind of weak sauce. You could say it's the corner box cover. You could say it's the Scarlet Witch cover, but it's the thing which describes the cover on some way. And then this is the designator, cover B, right? Makes sense. 1B, cover B, and then by, and then the artist. Right, and that goes at the end. So what we try to do this time out is if we see variations on these ones, they're kind of redundant, even if it's the publisher who provided it. So for instance, we would say things like 1 in 25 Marco Cicchetto cover B by Marco Cicchetto. We try to condense out the stuff that's absolutely redundant and turn it into, we do this programmatically, and as we process our 7,000 on average corrections per day or new data that's submitted our way, that's the formatting we try to follow on the whole thing. But that's the way we tend to go on these things. And I will try to Steve Dassinger's asking, did we answer the thing about best way to tag at issue level? I'm going to try to wrap that one into this answer, but thank you for the reminder on that one. Anyway, so that's the preferred method we have of writing out item description. Try to follow that one, but basically 3 parts, right? The ratio, if it exists, the adjective, if you've got one that makes any kind of sense. If you don't have anything to say, just don't say anything at all. But if you have something descriptive, like this is the Scarlet Witch cover, or the regular cover, or something like that, sure. Then that's followed by the designator over here, and then we're going to tack on by. If we know the cover artist, we'll put down by that guy. And if you don't put that on, it'll get tacked on automatically as soon as we know the cover artist. And so that's the format we go with on those things. All right, that's the item description. Now, I talked about two other things. There's the item title and the overall title. And this plays in a little bit with the concept of tags as well. So we'll talk to that as well. Now, when we look at, let's pull up a book here. Let's see if I can think of what would be a good one here. Well, let's see. I think Harry Potter, if we've got him in here, do we? Harry Potter. Oh, good Lord, so much Harry Potter. The funny thing is, we actually don't have. No one has yet indexed the straight up Harry Potter books, but that's actually kind of hilarious. Let's see, Star Wars. Let's see, Tales of the Jedi. Okay. Actually, let's go back to Star Wars. All right. You guys might have been typing along at some point, and you might have seen an item that says something like Star Wars named items in other titles. What the heck does that mean? Well, what's talking about there is not the item description, but the item title field. So let's look at some of these ones right now. So these are things that the title itself is not Star Wars, but it refers to. It's actually titled, the item itself, Star Wars something or other as it goes. And once again, this thing is absolutely blowing me away with its lack of speed. But okay, so it makes sense. So we've got 100 of them that came up. And these are things like the free comic book day from Dark Horse from a couple of years, Star Wars Phantom Menace 25th anniversary, and so forth. These are all things that Star Wars was part of the title of the title name. So even though the actual title was called Star Wars Solo, that's its actual title name that we put in its item title at some point. If I can find it. Here we are. Its title was Solo, a Star Wars story adaptation, was its name on the whole thing, which is a little bit of a variant on Star Wars Solo adaptation. This is probably the way it was listed exactly in the indicia. This is probably the way it was listed on the title, or is more commonly known. So this gives you a way of cross-referencing things where the cover title is very different than what its official name is. The classic one of this is things like annuals, or not annuals, but book collections. So for instance, if you look at Hellblazer, it'll take every 6, 8, 10 issues, whatever else, it'll wrap them up, usually along storyline arcs. And then over the years, DC has decided that let's go ahead and put numbers, along the back side of them to let people know what order they kind of came in. And so it'll be like, Hellblazer, All His Engines might be book 11 of Star Wars. Well, if I'm looking at the thing in my hand, maybe I think, oh, let me look on the spine. There's an 11 there, maybe. But I'm looking at the front of the whole thing. It says Hellblazer, All His Engines. Well, if you look at it in Hellblazer, maybe you think, let me scroll all the way down to the bottom where the books are listed, and like, oh, hey, there's one that says book 11, All His Engines. But it really helps you, though, if you've got the ability to say, hey, look, this thing has kind of an alternate name, right? The thing that's on the title, loud, bold, and proud, that's the very first thing that anyone would look at, is different than what the title is in the indicia. In this case, if I'm looking at the title and it says, Avengers, the Karnath Imperative, or something like that, the Ultron, the Ultron Imperative. I'm thinking words like Ultron and things like that. I can say find Ultron Imperative, and it's going to say, oh, hey, did you want the Ultron Imperative as a named thing in another title? And at which point it'll take me to Avengers, book 19 or whatever it was. Or if I'm looking for Hellblazer, All His Engines, I can type All His Engines, and it'll say, oh yeah, here it is as a named thing in another title, and it'll take me to Hellblazer book 11. So it gives you that cross-reference. That's a pretty good thing on that score. There's kind of like the same idea, but flipped a different way, which is sometimes there's a title that is named, Star Wars Tales of Vader, book 3, Vader Ascendant, right? So the actual name of the book is Star Wars Vader Ascendant, but it's book 7 of Tales of Vader or something like that. So there we have the idea of an overall title. And so when you have something like that, and it happens mostly in books, but it can happen in other places. Let me see if I can find one very, very quickly. Let's go to Star Wars. No, Star Trek. They tend to go nuts on this stuff. Star Trek, all good things. No. I'm just going to page a little bit here, and if I don't find one in a second, I will just move on. But what these things will do, if you see them, is you'll see them in big blue. It'll say like volume 7 of this larger story concept, and that's what this title is. And of course, because I didn't prep this ahead of time, I'm immediately not finding one because there's 7,000 Star Trek things, and yeah, okay. Anyway, but let me just go ahead and move on. When you've got something and you want to say it's part 7 of a larger series, if you go and edit its title information here, you'll see that there's this thing called overall title. In which case, give the one that this is one part of, and you say, and which part of it is it? And so if this was, the Deep Space Nine Dark Reader, if it was, part 7 of the, of the Deep Space Saga or something like that, you would say Deep Space Saga part 7, and then it would appear up there, and it would let you link to all the other books in the series as a nice cross-reference on a title level. All right. Lastly, we have Brian's question, which is, what do we do about tags when you're talking about on an issue level? All right. So tags, we talked about the last couple of things, are a way of saying, hey, this title is kind of this sort of thing, right? It's Italian, it's war, it's an anthology, it's superheroes, it's whatever the thing is. The idea being, if I like this sort of thing, like it's body horror, it's psychological terror, whatever thing is, I can click on that tag you see right up at the top and find other things that I also might like that are sort of like it. So if I look at say I don't know, Star Trek, right? If I click on that, here's all the other books that are tagged as Star Trek on one level or another. Technical manuals, and like Worlds of Star Trek. World Without End by Bantam is apparently a Star Trek thing, not named Star Trek, but tagged as Star Trek. And so it lets me easily find things that are like that. Well, what do we do on an issue level? So like I don't want to say that issue number 27 of this particular thing might be a anthology, or it might be a war thing or whatever else. But what if it's only just issue 27 I'm talking about? There isn't a mechanic to associate a tag to an individual issue. For that, honestly, what you want to be doing, if you want to form a cross-reference, the limit here is it has to be a single cross-reference, and it really ought to be about a title. It makes sense to say at that point, give it an item title of something or other. So the classic example of this one is, let's go to 4-Color Comics. Yeah, that is excellent spelling of 4 over here. F-O-U-R, Color Comics. All right, what the heck was 4-Color Comics? 4-Color Comics was, for comic indexers, the nightmare title of all nightmare titles, because every single issue was wildly different. It started out with Little Joe, and then followed by Harold Teen, Alley Oop, oh wow, 2 in a row, Smilin' Jack, Raggedy Ann and Andy, Smitty, etc. Well, what would happen with this one is you'd get to, see, we got Smilin' Jack again. This is Smilin' Jack number 14, and you might notice right up here in the small print, it says it's a 4-color comic. This is as close as you will ever get to having this thing have a coherent name, other than through legend. But pity the poor person looking at this saying, hey, I got Smilin' Jack number 14, and you look at for a Smilin' Jack series, and there is no Smilin' Jack series number 14, but there is 4-Color Comics second series number 14, which happened to feature Smilin' Jack. So that is what item titles were absolutely made for, is the idea that I can go ahead and say, yeah, give me Smilin' Jack, and it'll show you all the Smilin'. How do I even spell Smilin'? Smilin' Jack. I guess he did have his own series. It did not run. Yeah, Smilin' Jack only ran 8 issues, and this is typically where people lose their minds. So I've got, but mine is number 14. Did you just not remember the other ones over here. And that's when you get to like, oh yeah, now we need to talk about Smilin' Jack as a named item in other titles. And at that point, you discover where your 14 came from. Because, yeah, it wasn't actually in Smilin' Jack number 14. It was Four Color Comics second series number 14, and probably number 51 and 27. And yeah, here it was. It was in the first series is issue number 5, 10. In the second series is number 4, 14, 36, 58, 80, 149. Oh, good God, it gets better. He was in Large Feature Comics first series as number 12, 14, and 25, etc. But if you were holding this in your hand, Smilin' Jack and the Secret of the Everglades, issue number 25, you'd lose your mind looking for this book. But that's what the item title is really for. Anyway, as far as tags go, really, yeah, our intention is not to complicate the universe by having every thing be tagged on an individual level, of all the possible cross references that could ever go along with describing every issue of every comic book. That is not that's a talking about bridge too far. That one is whoa. That is so far from, was it Ramagan? I can't even tell you. So no, I don't want to, if you want to describe all the story arcs that ever went through on in Spider-Man and say, well, the one where, Black Widow came in was kind of a crime, whatever thing, but, and it was kind of psychological horror, but there was a romance, but only for that one issue. No, for the titles on the whole thing, keep it to like the top 8 items that apply as far as a tag goes. I don't think we even try to show more than 9, no matter how big your screen is. And no, it's not meant to extend to the individual issue. It's not, that's beyond the brief of what ComicBase does. But if you do, on the other hand, don't ignore the idea though, that if it really does belong as a cross-reference to another issue, like, that this one is, Large Feature Comics number 12 is really Smilin' Jack. If you point to it that way, it'll get you where you want to go as far as tying it back. And then if you look at Smilin' Jack, maybe it tells you what the hell Smilin' Jack was about. Because I got to tell you, I don't even know myself. So that's a deal. Agent DeCamp mentions, if you want to tag individual issues, if this is something you really feel like you need to do, you can use custom entries, and you also, nothing's stopping you from putting in the notes. So if you want to use a custom field for it yourself, and say, no, I really want to do that stuff, put as much stuff as you want in those fields, and you can search for them, you can report on them, you can do all the things, but when you send it to us, we know it's custom, and we're not going to do a thing with it. So we won't take it away, we won't add to it, we won't delete it. But if you really feel like you want to tag it on an individual level, yes, Agent DeCamp is exactly right. You could absolutely do that one. As far as labeling things like facsimile books, I like the idea of facsimile books, of just put it in the notes as facsimile. Like if you do a find in notes for facsimile, you will find all the facsimiles in ComicBase. I'm relatively certain. And that's just editorially on our side, is we want to make it so that we're regular enough when we do things that it's possible to search across these things. But if you have any very ambitious things that you want to do about tagging things on to a very detailed level, that's something we're happy to let you indulge in on your own. And honestly, we need to move on with other things because we got a lot on our plates just in general. So, all right, guys, I think that's going to do it for me today. Thank you all for joining us. I really do appreciate everyone who came here. It's been really great talking to you all, and hope we're doing some cool things that make you all happy. So I will see you all on the next one. Take care, and I guess it's probably a cold out because I don't think my board is working, so I'm just going to say bye. Take care. Bye-bye.